for us. So I do want to, first of all, thank the Labor senators that made a contribution to the debate on this bill, because what it outlined was the extraordinary amount of frustration and stress that has been felt by participants and all their carers and families. We heard speaker after speaker talk about the issues around the NDIS, the concerns around the NDIS, and the fact that the NDIS is not working as intended. So under this government's watch, what we have seen is a litany of failures to actually deliver for people with disability, the participants of the NDIS. We heard yesterday stories about delays in receiving access to the NDIS. We heard stories about delays in receiving services and supports under the NDIS. And what really is quite stark in terms of this government's ability to actually address these concerns, because these obviously are not concerns that had just arisen. These are stories after stories of families that have been told by senators and members across this parliament. Each senator in this chamber, I'm sure, would have received representations from participants and their families. They would have received letters, emails, phone calls, all seeking help in terms of resolving long-standing issues. Just last week, I had a family that has a 2.5-year-old son who has been trying to get access to a planning meeting for a year. This is a child who's 2.5, 1 year. And when they saw the light at the end of the tunnel, they finally got an appointment with the planner. They then get a phone call, a message left on an answering machine to say they'd have to cancel. So this was 3 days out from the actual planning date. They had to cancel that meeting. Now you can really imagine what that family felt like. A year has passed. They're trying to, seek supports and services for their child. So they reached out. They reached out to my office, and we obviously spoke to the NDIA, and there was another meeting that was rescheduled. But that shouldn't be happening. These lengthy delays should not be happening. The delays that we hear about in terms of equipment for people, sometimes that equipment arriving too late and the person has passed away. This is not what the NDIS is about. The NDIS is a scheme that was meant to enable participants to live a normal life, to be able to participate in the community, in the workforce, just as everyone else would be able to. But this is not what's happening. We have family after family ringing in tears because they can't get the services, or even worse. We've heard that their child is not disabled enough. These are the comments that are coming from planners to families. And of course we all know that the Administrative Appeals Tribunal's workload in terms of appeals has skyrocketed in terms of the NDIS appeals. Skyrocketed. This shouldn't be happening. So I just want to focus, demonstrate to the Minister, to the government, exactly what is happening in my home state of Tasmania. Satisfaction with the NDIS has dramatically dropped. It's fallen 30%. 30%, and I say this to Senator Patrick in particular. Satisfaction with the NDIS in Tasmania has fallen 30% in 12 months. 30%. So now the figures that the NDIS, these are NDIS figures, these are not figures I've just plucked from the air. They're figures that are on the NDIS website, shows that in June 2018, 97% of participants described their satisfaction with the agency's planning process as good or very good. Good or very good. 12 months later, in June 2019, that collapsed. That satisfaction rate collapsed by 30% to 67%. An extraordinary. So what is occurring in Tasmania where you have such a dramatic collapse in satisfaction? Even government senators should be able to acknowledge that this is an extraordinary collapse in satisfaction. So what we have seen, and at the same time, at the same time as we've seen this collapse of satisfaction in Tasmania, Tasmania was merged with Victoria in July 2018. So, it's no wonder satisfaction has plummeted. Tasmania no longer has a dedicated, as I understand it, a dedicated NDIS General Manager, but is managed from Victoria. Problems with the merger were even outlined by the Tasmanian Liberal government submission. Now, what they had to say was, and I quote, "The Tasmanian government has observed differences in Tasmania's capacity to resolve issues quickly at a local operational level since the NDIA restructure merging Tasmania and Victoria in July 2018. This restructure saw the loss of the regional manager position in Tasmania." So, why was management for Tasmania merged with Victoria? Why has Tasmania been downgraded? These are the answers that we are seeking. We have Mr Shorten, the Shadow Minister. He has reported and spoken about the issues that he has seen as he's travelled around Australia, hearing the horror stories about this vital scheme being suffocated as a result of the neglect of this government. And in Tasmania there's widespread issues relating to disability transport funding and to the availability of NDIS-approved allied health professionals. So we have a collapse in support in Tasmania. We even have, as I've said, the Tasmanian government talking about the differences that they have observed since the merging or the restructure and merging of Tasmania with Victoria in July 2018. So that's a number of questions that I would like the Minister to respond to, because Tasmanians would like to know the answer to these questions. Why has this happened? Because certainly it sounds like to me the Tasmanian Liberal government are not happy about it either. So if the Minister could respond to those questions, because certainly yesterday the Minister's summing up was quite quick. In fact, I think I blinked and missed it, which was a shame, because there were so many stories and questions that this side of the chamber put forward that were not responded to. And you just cannot dismiss these stories. You cannot dismiss participants and families and carers of participants by just doing a 1 minute summing up and sitting down. You just can't treat people like that. So let's move to some of the issues that were raised also about the bill itself. Now, universally, the disability advocates are seeking to have this bill delayed. That's what they've asked for, and of course, not unsurprisingly, this government ignored that call. So I just want to go to a couple of the submissions that were put forward into the inquiry that was held by the Community Affairs Legislation Committee in September. And People with Disability Australia, and for those listening, and the People with Disability Australia, PWDA, is a leading disability rights advocacy and representative organisation of and for all people with disability. They are a national cross-disability organisation which represents the interests of people with all kinds of disability. They are a non-profit, non-government organisation, and they do tremendous work, which I'm sure the Minister would agree. Their recommendation in their submission to this bill was that they believe, and I quote, the disability sector would benefit from more time to consider any of the bill and unintended consequences. They noted that the explanatory memorandum or the second reading speech provided limited analysis of the possible impacts that they've referred to in their submission. They go on to recommend that the proposed changes in the bill be deferred and considered within the upcoming June review of the NDIS Act. And, it is odd that this bill is coming here today and has been introduced by the government when we have the June review currently looking into the NDIS Act. We also have a submission again by an organisation, young people in nursing homes. Now, the Alliance, as people will know, is a national peak organisation dedicated to resolving the issue of younger people with disability living in residential aged care facilities and those at risk of aged care placement. They, again, in their, and if I have time in a separate contribution, I will outline a number of the issues that they've raised in their submission, but they too have asked that the bill not proceed at this time. So why is the government refusing to listen to advocates? Why are they refusing to listen to the advocacy disability organisations and proceeding with this bill? I'd like to know that as a start from the Minister, if she could respond.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Your time has expired. Minister.